One of the most powerful things a leader can say is this: we handled that poorly. But let's be honest, a lot of leaders never say this. I was sent an article recently that I read about Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella publicly acknowledging what he described as a lack of empathy. And this lack of empathy, it was surrounding recent layoffs. Microsoft had a return to office frustrations, and these frustrations were coming from the inside of his organization. And basically, this guy is going on record of saying, like, we didn't handle this well. And when I read that, it immediately grabbed my attention. Because in today's workplace, I think we're seeing a growing empathy gap in leadership. Why? Well, organizations are moving fast. Pressure is high. Expectations are intense. Technology is changing everything. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, many leaders are unintentionally disconnecting from people at the emotional level. And it's not because these leaders are evil. It's not because they don't care, but because pressure has a way of narrowing our focus. And when leaders become overly focused on results, efficiency, execution, all the things that we got to do day in and day out, empathy is often the first thing that's going to get sacrificed. So today on the show, we're going to discuss what the empathy gap is, why it matters, how leaders unintentionally create it, and most importantly, how do we close this gap? Because leadership without empathy, it eventually is going to create distance. And distance is going to destroy the trust in your organization.
This is the Champion Forum podcast with Jeff Hancher, the forum for leaders, champions, and dreamers.
Most business leaders say relationships matter, but very few have a system for them. At Giftology, we go beyond just gifting, and we help you turn relationships into a repeatable growth engine. Stay top of mind, build trust faster, and generate referrals consistently. Giftology. Relationships can take you places marketing can't.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. Man, this is a subject that I hope we're going to take some good notes on to help us become more impactful leaders. We're talking about the empathy gap today. Let's define empathy correctly. Let's get some baseline here. Empathy is not lowering standards. So often, some leaders think, man, if I go down this empathy road too hard, it's going to lower my standards. It might make me feel a little bit weak. Empathy is not lowering standards. It's not avoiding accountability. It's not becoming soft. God forbid you would ever be labeled soft, right? Empathy is this ability to understand emotional experiences of other people. And one of the biggest misconceptions in leadership is that empathy and accountability are in competition with one another, and they're not. They do not compete with one another. The best leaders in the world are both direct and empathetic at the very same time. You know, you can challenge people while still valuing people. It's possible. I know it seems like, man, how do you strike this unique balance? But I'm here to tell you it's absolutely possible. You can have hard conversations while preserving dignity. And honestly, this is where many leaders are going to struggle. This is where the challenge is going to happen, because sometimes this leader goes down this pattern of thinking of, if I become empathetic, I'm going to lose authority. No, empathy actually increases influence, because people trust leaders who make them feel seen. We know this is true. If you feel in any way that your culture is at risk of this happening, man, you want to prevent this risk. And I would highly recommend, and I know this is self-serving, but I would highly recommend that you get the leaders in your organization a copy of my book, Firm Feedback in a Fragile World. And also, don't just buy the book. Invest in the Firm Feedback in a Fragile World companion curriculum guide that comes with videos. And you might be saying, Jeff, listen, I'm a longtime listener. We already read the book. I got the memo. That's great. However, reading about feedback is one thing. Actually applying feedback techniques is a whole other situation here. This digital companion curriculum, it's designed to help you and your team discuss the concepts in Firm Feedback in a Fragile World, offering what? Real-time accountability while showing empathy. That's the heart of the whole book. And what's this going to do at the end of it? It's going to increase your comprehension of the material. And knowing something, comprehending something, it can be miles apart. When you go through these companion videos, I personally present each topic in a brief video session. And what we do is we set the stage for thought-provoking discussion for the moderator inside of your organization. When you utilize this curriculum and this video commentary with your team, it's going to help them more quickly apply the themes of the book that maybe you've appreciated. It's going to increase team engagement, and it's going to help your people become those leaders that can strike the balance between empathy and accountability. That is the heart of the book. The video and curriculum guide help you take it deeper so now people can execute and comprehend it. If this is something that you're interested in, go to jeffhancher.com/products to learn more about that. Man, I will tell you, we can't just talk about leadership. We have to engage in leadership. And the first thing is understanding it. You know, you don't need to lose authority for the sake of being empathetic. That is not necessary. Here's a practical question that I think leaders should begin asking more often. What might this situation feel like from their perspective? Just asking this introspective question, it introduces empathy into this whole dynamic. That one question, what might this situation feel like from their perspective? Man, it's going to slow down your emotional blindness. Ask this question before a meeting, before feedback, before a difficult conversation, before sending the email. Pause and ask, how is this landing emotionally? Leaders, let me tell you, just by doing these couple of things, that's empathy in action. That is putting action and execution to empathy. Just asking these internal questions. You know, pressure is one of the most common reasons why empathy starts to reduce in organizations and within leadership. It's very important to recognize this. So important. You know, pressure changes us. Sometimes for the good, sometimes not so much. You know, when organizations start facing, like Microsoft, layoffs, maybe restructuring, economic uncertainty, which we've all been through. Maybe it's the pressure of growth, which is good pressure, but nonetheless, it's pressure. How about something that all of us are dealing with, AI disruption? Man, when these things start to happen, leaders often become hyper-focused on execution. And I am here for some good execution. And under pressure, though, people naturally are going to narrow their focus. You're going to focus way more on execution, and rightly so. But when this happens, tasks become more important than people. This is the watch out. When tasks start becoming more important than people, this is when empathy starts to leak out of the leadership impact. Efficiency becomes more important than communication. Speed becomes more important than emotional awareness. That's how empathy gaps form. Not because you're a monster, not because you're trying to kill people. No, it's through neglect. And the danger in all of this, leaders, is when the leaders start thinking, man, I didn't really mean to hurt anybody. I've been there. I've said that. You've probably said that. Nobody listening to this show is like, how can I create more pain? That's never anybody's goal. But leadership impact, it's not measured on intention. Unfortunately, it's not. It's measured by how people experience our leadership. Your people experience your leadership emotionally. That's a fact. Not on the balance sheet, not on the metrics, not on the KPIs, although those things are very important. One of the best things leaders can do to increase communication during the pressure-filled seasons is to not disappear when things get hard. Do not disappear. It's easy to shut the door, lock it, and just lock into whatever it is. Listen, your people, they're not looking for perfect answers. But I will tell you what they absolutely need. They need your presence. Here's some things that you can do practically to hold yourself accountable. Hold more one-on-one check-ins during uncertainty. This is not the time to peel away from this. And I know it's very tempting to do it because the mission demands it. I got to execute. I got to get my hand on the plow. I got to get in there. I got to do I. No, more check-ins with your team. Why? They're uncertain. They need your presence in this moment. The other thing I would tell you is communicate earlier. Don't wait until the talk is now at the water cooler. Acknowledge whatever tension is coming, honestly. That's what I loved about this Microsoft CEO. Wow. I mean, look, it was after the fact, but nonetheless comes out publicly and says, man, I don't think we handled that very well. Here's a real practical way. Ask people how they're doing. Ask people how they're doing through the layoffs. Are they thinking maybe it's them next? Ask people how they're doing with the adoption of AI, and maybe they're afraid they might lose their job. Another thing that you can do that's a big miss oftentimes in season of stress and high change, explain the why behind the decisions. And you might be saying, look, I'm the leader and they just got to fall in line. Suit yourself. But I am here to tell you, when people have a better understanding, whether they like it or not, we can't control. But at least whenever they have a level of context, man, it's going to really, really minimize some anxiety. Silence is what creates anxiety. When people don't know. Presence, it creates stability. Now we're not trying to fill in the gaps of what's going on. And I will tell you this, there is a high cost to your organization when there's low leadership empathy. There's a high cost. Low empathy leadership, it creates emotional distance. And this is risky. Emotional distance, when it starts to happen in organizations, it starts to create distrust. Disengagement will come right behind that. Resentment will start to set in. Turnover inevitably will start to happen. Next thing you know, you went from having this robust culture to all of a sudden, we now have a fear-based culture. Everybody's wondering what's coming next. And when that happens, people will stop speaking honestly. They stop bringing new ideas to the table. They stop feeling connected to the mission like maybe they once did. And eventually, you, the leader, you're going to start asking questions when this starts to happen. You're going to ask what would be a silly question, which is, why is morale dropping so much? Why is this happening? And next thing you know, you're going to be trying to create an ice cream social to rally the troops. And I'm going to tell you what, there is not enough ice cream on planet Earth to fix this challenge. Because people don't just want to be utilized. They want to be valued. And man, there is a huge difference between these two things of being utilized and being valued. And when empathy is gone, people start to feel undervalued. A company can have the best profits and still have an unhealthy culture. Never confuse productivity with emotional health. This is a big mistake. This is when we feel like everything is going well. Next thing you know, we get hit on the blind side. People can perform externally while struggling internally. Meaning, our stock price is saying one thing and inside the whole thing is holding on by a thread. This is not the brand that we would want, where we just feel like this is a house of cards. Looks great on the outside, but on the inside, it's crumbling apart. Here's some application that I think you can run with right away. We need to create moments of human connection. And as leaders, We have to be very intentional about this. Check in on that struggling employee. Don't just chalk it up to they're a whiner, they're a complainer. Check in, ask great open-ended questions. Recognize effort publicly. Thank people specifically. Thank you, I always say, is never good enough. Thank you for what? The more specific you are, the more repeatable the thank you is. Ask great follow-up questions. Don't just get good at asking questions. Listen, active listening, and then hit some great follow-up questions. And then slow down enough to listen. These are not check-in-the-box type moments. And let me really draw some attention to this. This listening thing, it's one of the highest forms of empathy that there is. Not fixing, not interrupting. And I know, if you're like me, man, you love to fix some stuff. I love to fix some stuff too. But active listening is not fixing. It's not interrupting. It's actually listening. Some employees, they don't need a solution. They need to feel heard. Big difference in these things. So maybe you jumped on the show today and what you needed to hear was that empathy and accountability, they can live together. And this is where mature leadership lives, is having this belief, having this understanding, and knowing that it's possible, even if it's not happening currently under your leadership impact. You don't have to choose between caring for people deeply and challenging people. You can do both. This is the dynamic, quite frankly, that we got to set goal. In fact, accountability without empathy, it feels very harsh, very harsh. At best, you're going to get compliance this way. Now, on the other end of this pendulum swinging, you have empathy without accountability, you're going to have a culture of very high confusion. And you might be really liked, but you're going to lose respect. Healthy leadership, it requires both. And some of the best leaders that I've ever seen, they say hard things in a way that still preserves dignity. Isn't it true? If you look at your Mount Rushmore of leaders, isn't that what they did? They could say the hard things, but man, they preserved your dignity. They never pulled you through the mud one time, but they did not tiptoe around a hard conversation. So the next time you have to have a difficult conversation, lead with clarity. Speak directly, but communicate with dignity. Tone matters. Delivery matters. Facial expressions matter. All of it matters. Simple phrases that you can say matter. Think about some of these. I'll give you some maybe to try. Brad, I really want to help you succeed. Wow. That simple phrase could carry some level of impact. Brad, I believe you can improve. I believe there's opportunity for you to grow and to improve. And hey, I want to let you know, I'm addressing this because I care. I'm addressing this because I care. Man, that's saying I'm about to bring some firmness, but I'm also going to preserve your dignity. Empathy changes the tone of accountability. It really does, and it lands way different. I think one of the reasons that Satya Nadella's comments stood out to me is because self-aware leadership, man, it is rare. It is rare, and I love you all. But can we just look in the mirror and say, yeah, I could probably do a better job becoming a little more self-aware? It's hard because it takes humility for a leader to say, hey, we lacked empathy. To be able to do that with one of the strongest brands on planet Earth and own that, wow. That takes a lot of humility. But honestly, that level of reflection, man, that is healthy. Because leadership, it's not just about getting results. It's about how people experience your leadership while getting those results. In a world that's moving faster than ever, empathy is becoming a leadership differentiator. I would go as far as to say it might even be a competitive advantage. And this isn't because people are weak. It's because people are human. They're human. And leaders who understand people deeply will always lead people more effectively. So as you lead this week, ask yourself, are people simply working for me? Or do they genuinely feel seen by me? Because leadership without empathy, it eventually is going to create distance. And that distance, it's going to destroy trust. If this episode added value to you in any way, I'm asking one thing from you. Share it with another leader in your life. And remember, you can be a strong leader and a compassionate leader at the same time. In fact, I would say the best leaders do this. Until next week, lead with empathy and never stop turning that pressure into potential.
The Champion Forum podcast with Jeff Hancher. Lead, inspire, win.